Hello and welcome to Economic Security Watch, the podcast that takes you direct to the individuals and stories shaping the new investment landscape. I'm Danielle Myles. I want to start by mentioning our monthly newsletter, which delves into the most important economic security developments around the world. Subscribe at FDI Intelligence or at the link in the show notes. In today's episode, we're looking at none other than rare earths, that category of critical minerals which have become the poster child of economic security in much of the West and also parts of the East. China has long dominated the extraction and processing of rare earths, which are critical inputs for a long list of modern-day technologies, everything from EV motors to wind turbines to consumer electronics. But the risks attached to this reality really hit home last year when Beijing hiked export controls as part of its tit-for-tat trade war with the US. Factories from Europe to Asia felt the impact, and governments, led by the US, sprang into action to try building a China-free supply chain. But what will it take to meet this lofty goal? To talk things through, I'm joined by Mark Wall, CEO of Australian miner American Rare Earths, which is pursuing a number of rare earth projects in the US. Mark, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Danielle. Great to be here.
So let's start with a high-level picture. China's dominance of the rare earth industry globally, when it comes to mining or extraction, it sits at about 70%. When it comes to processing, I understand it's about 85 to 90%. Putting aside the rhetoric and politics, as someone within the industry, how big a risk or threat is this to the economic stability of other countries?
It's a great question, Danielle. I mean, we hear words like stability, economic stability, security. To me, it's a little more like survival. Rare earths really are feeding the technology that we rely on as advanced societies today. So without it, it becomes really problematic to continue to advance as a society. I mean, if we went back to Mr. Maslow in the 40s, who developed his hierarchy of needs, the five levels in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They were pretty simple in the old days. Fire, we needed shelter. But in today, how we live, we've got power grids, water treatment, food supply, the robotics related to food supply, national defense, policing these days more and more using drones and robotics. And then how we belong and interact is really electronic focus these days. So I think it's more, the word survival is a better word than security.
Thinking about all of the various efforts to try and build a non-China supply chain, American Rare Earth's flagship project is obviously part of that solution. It's the Halleck Creek mine in Wyoming, and it's an important part of the solution, particularly in the US, given the country has only one operating rare earth mine today, being the Mountain Pass mine in California. So in a nutshell, can you explain the scale of the Halleck Creek mine's deposits, particularly compared to some of the other projects we might know are in development in the US? And what's the timing? When can we expect it to come online?
Halleck Creek is in Wyoming, and I was in Wyoming last week. What a fantastic state, great people, really well versed in mining related and resource related projects. It's really big. It's two and a half, a little bit more than 2.5 billions with a B tons of ore. It is the largest by far on a total rare earth oxide basis within the United States. And critically, it contains both heavy and light rare earths. So I've come from a gold copper background into a mining world where there's all kinds of crazy names for everything. But the light rare earths are really useful, very needed in robotics, in medicine, a whole range of areas. Your heavier rare earths tend to be a little more specialized, a lot of defense applications. So this is a cornerstone asset that should be there for hundreds of years providing an anchor to US supply in the state of Wyoming.
And do you know of any other rare earth mines under development today in the US which have sort of a bigger or more valuable resource underneath it?
Certainly not. I mean, when we talk bigger, you and I could go and lease 100,000 kilometers of the ocean and say we have the biggest lithium deposit, and that would be true, but we'll never actually extract that lithium. So this is materially the largest rare earth mine in the United States on a total rare earth oxide basis. So total contained rare earths, which is what it needs to be about at the end of the day.
So since July 2025, we've seen the US government take a number of measures to try to support the country's rare earth industry. The most notable one, and the one that's caught lots of attention, is sort of taking equity stakes in a number of miners, about 7 by my last count. As a corporate leader in the industry, what's your view on this sort of unorthodox approach to building a US supply chain?
I think, Danielle, there's a number of ways to come at that question. So one is it's not that unorthodox in some ways. If you look, for example, at Project Vault is about forming a reserve of critical minerals. We know in 1975, the US created a strategic oil reserve. They already did that. And at the time, a lot of folks found that a little bit odd. But why did they do that? Fundamentally, they did that with a national security rationale for the United States. So in the 70s, we already saw that happen, just in a different commodity at a different time. When it comes to these equity stakes or other things that are going on, as we've just said, we're in a competition for the future. That's actually where we're at. I think this is not about security of economy. It's about competition for the future, the race for the future. So China's in front. And why is China in front? Because they started early and they were very thoughtful in what was done in taking over the control of the mining and processing of rare earths generally and the magnet related rare earths, which is the space that we play in, very much so. So the Western world, we say the United States, but it's the Western world with the US at the lead. They're the tip of the spear, needs to catch up. And the way they catch up is they try to create a level playing field. They try to leverage the private sector that exists in the Western world that is very nimble, able to move, and can really get things done. And so I think the US government's looking at all of the different levers that it has to do that, whether it's create a pricing environment that is realistic, whether it's provide financing on terms that gets projects off the ground. And I think the taxpayer needs to get something. Yes, they get economic security. Yes, they get a good chance of winning the race to the future. But I don't think that it's a terrible thing to use all of the arrows in the quiver, if you like, of the US government in order to do what it needs to do to win this race to the future.
So what about the idea then, the hypothesis of the government taking an equity stake in American rare earths? Is that something that you speak to your leadership team about, and sort of how do you and the leadership team feel about the idea of that?
I was in DC a couple of weeks ago. I'm back there next week. It isn't a discussion that I've had at this point in time. I think it's all about value at the end of the day. So value for American rare earths and its shareholders and stakeholders, and value for the US government and the US government taxpayers. So where's the value? Now there's longer term value for sure. Where's the shorter term value? So any deal that has sense and everyone gets value, then it becomes pretty easy to stack behind that. But at this point, we have not had those discussions.
The Halleck Creek mine project, I understand, won't just be about extraction. It will also have some separation capabilities and refining stages as well. Now, MP Materials, which has the Mountain Pass mine in California, they also have sort of stages further down the supply chain, and they've received extensive federal government support, namely offtake agreements and pricing floors. Does that support disadvantage similar projects in the US, such as yours in Wyoming?
It doesn't. MP have done a great job. They're a first mover, and someone has to be first. And it, in some ways, creates a path to follow, or there's areas where we'll deviate from that path. So I think it's great that that's happened with MP. Again, these price floors are really creating a real price, because we've started in a world where the price is not real, because as we've said, China is a long way ahead in this area. So I think it's great that they're the tip of the spear on the company side, and in many ways that makes our life a little bit easier.
So we've spoken about what the US government is doing at home, and internationally, they've been leading the establishment of a number of bilateral agreements. I think there's about 14 by now, in a bid to build China-free critical mineral supply chains, not just focusing on rare earths. How do you rate their proactiveness over the past 9 months in terms of trying to diminish China's sort of stranglehold over the industry? And what should they be focusing on in terms of the support that they can give companies like yourself and the industry more broadly?
I think it's massive what they've done, Danielle. I mean, the United States government is a massive apparatus, and to be able to focus numerous different departments and agencies to a specific goal is incredible. So they've moved very, very quickly. I think there's different aspects. What you've said before, in this business, there's an upstream mining and preliminary processing, let's say through to a rare earth oxide or a separated rare earth oxide. There's the midstream where we go to metal, and then there's the downstream where it's turned into a consumer product, if you like, that goes into an aeroplane or a medical device or some form of technology. So I think the government's been looking at all of those different layers and levels and has been working out how they best support that. What I've been very focused on is just getting on and building a mine. So some of what's going on, you've got research and development areas of the government, uh, and I'm less interested in the science project side of things. I'm more interested in getting this all built out, going forward, getting this mine done.
You said your priority is the mine and bringing the mine online. So let's talk a little bit about this. So the scoping study for phase one of the Halleck Creek project shows investment of about $456 million. But I'm guessing the total amount could be bigger than that. Is that right?
That's right, Danielle. We're deep into the pre-feasibility study at the moment. We're actually starting the feasibility study before we end the pre-feasibility study, because time is important in all of this. So the throughput, I can't really go into the details because we haven't published this yet, but I can say the throughput will be higher than the scoping study, which will naturally drive the capital higher. As you mentioned, we're also doing a parallel study into the midstream, the metallization component, which is another factor and another factor of capital. But it's a really important step because that creates the precursor to the final technology integration step. So the scoping study is somewhat outdated for sure. We are a domestic United States play. Yes, you talked earlier about the friendly countries, Asia. There's some really good technology and experience there in the downstream magnet making. We're quite focused at the moment on a purely US domestic supply chain from mine all the way through to magnet, and those magnets might go to robotics or defense or industry, wherever they may go.
From sort of the hub of this project is obviously in Wyoming, and we know that Wyoming sort of consistently is one of the US states that receives the least amount of foreign investment sort of year in, year out. Now, this bid by the US government and other governments to localize critical mineral supply chains is often spurred by national security considerations or national goals. But it seems that at a local level, these projects can also help spur local economic development goals. I mean, how do you see projects like this helping local economies that might be in need of investment?
That would, Danielle, just massively. I was in Wyoming last week. I mean, Wyoming's blessed by its people and by its countryside. It's an amazing place. The county we're in between two counties, and economic development is important in those counties. So being in Wyoming, the great thing is infrastructure exists. There's a strong resource history in Wyoming, and where you've got rail, road, power generation, power distribution, these are really important things. This is where, if we go to somewhere like Greenland, being topical, there's a lot of good resource deposits in Greenland. The difference between Greenland and Wyoming, or one of them, is that the infrastructure exists in Wyoming. And that's a big deal when it comes to building something in a timely way and where you're managing the cost of doing it. So I think Wyoming, number 4 on the Fraser Institute, as an aside, for places to operate in the world, good places to operate in the world when it comes to developing resource projects. But incredible people, incredible countryside, great infrastructure, and a real focus on how can we bring economic development.
We're here on the Economic Security Watch podcast, but it's no secret that this concept of economic security is still emerging and is without strict definitions. But as someone who's working in one of the industries sort of at the crux of this area, what does economic security mean to you?
I go back to it's actually survival. I don't think it's security. I think where we as humans are in the world, that technology is more and more critical to us. It's how we get our water. It's how we get our heat via energy. So we need to continue to evolve in the area of technology. The thing with rare earths mining, a little different to some other areas of mining, is it's really a technology play. We are robotics. A robot has a brain, which is AI. It has sensor technology, the ability to see and understand its proximity to other things, which is Sony, Panasonic, and then it moves, and that's us. So where rare earths or magnet rare earths, where we are, really converts energy to movement. So when technology is evolving, things like humanoid robotics are evolving. Setting aside defense, space applications, medical applications, I think it's about economic survival more than economic security.
Mark, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Danielle.
And thank you all for tuning in. Economic Security Watch is a podcast by FDI Intelligence. For details on how to subscribe to it and our monthly newsletter, see the show notes, whether you're listening in on your podcast platform or watching on YouTube or fdiintelligence.com. As always, please share your feedback and ideas with me at danielle.myles@ft.com.